Thanks everybody for coming. I'm really honored to be able to have this conversation with Joanna tonight in front of all of you. And I just wanted to preface the introduction by saying thanks to the Owens for asking me to talk to Joanna and have the opportunity to write about this amazing show documenting the farm. I hope that you've all had an opportunity to step into the gallery and take a look at the amazing mats that are there and the silk-screened images that are presented, and if not, just to take a few minutes after our chat tonight and check it out. I asked Jemmy, I kind of sheepishly went into Jemmy's office and handed her my version of the text for the pamphlet that the gallery produced, and asked if she wouldn't mind if I actually asked Joanna some more questions and shared them with you, because there's so much background to the work that's presented here in this show, and I felt like I wanted to have the opportunity to talk with Joanna and to share with everybody a little bit more about how these mats and rugs came to be and how long Joanna has been spending on this subject matter and how close it is to her practice. I've known Joanna for a while now because she's been involved with the Handmade Assembly here in Sackville, which is a great conference, if you will, gathering of makers that happens here in Sackville every year, and Joanna's participated almost every year, either as a participant leading workshops or as someone who's selling work at the Heart and Pocket Review. And so it's been great to get to know her over the years. And you may have seen some of her amazing illustrated cards that she's sold at the Heart and Pocket Review. Joanna not only makes rugs, but she's an illustrator, a drawer, and an incredible weaver. So there's lots that she is great at, and so I'm really happy to have her work here to see. I first saw Joanna's rugs at Bella's Cafe in Amherst as part of the
Fiber Arts Festival?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then she had a show of the mats at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. And I was really excited when Jemmy said that Joanna was going to be showing the rugs here. There's a number of students and, of course, people in the community who are really interested in the practice of rug hooking, and so I knew that it would be a very successful show here. Not only did we think this, but the curators at the Textile Museum in Toronto also included Joanna in a show that's on right now, and I'm really disappointed I didn't get to go see it, but it's called Home Economics, and I think it's up for one more week.
One more week, and then it's traveling.
And is it coming here?
I don't know. I don't know where it's traveling yet, but it's traveling. So
well, we'll all cross our
fingers. There'll be an opportunity to see it somewhere else, sometime in the next year.
And the catalog is really fantastic. You get a chance to see it, but it highlights rug hooking from Canada over the last literally 150 years. So it's fantastic, and I didn't get to see it, but you get to see it.
Yeah, I did.
And congratulations for being included in that show. Joanna made a version, well, actually, the kitchen rug that you see in this show is there's another version
right.
there.
It's a second edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have this work here. So, as I said, I wanted to talk with Joanna informally and share the conversation with you because I want to learn more about the process of how she went about making this project and the stories that are linked to her family farm. She's been concentrating on the farm as a subject matter for a number of projects. And did it start in grad school?
It started in grad school in 2005.
Okay, so it's a while now.
Yeah.
And she developed projects while she was in grad school, and then, of course, it's been an ongoing project, and it's resulted in the rugs that are here. So I thought maybe what we could do is start the conversation by maybe just telling us a little bit about the process of making one of these rugs. I think people are probably a little bit familiar with it, but just in case they're not.
Yeah. So that starts us off with this image of these thumbnail sketches. So initially, starting out working on these rugs, I had started with all the rugs that are of the buildings. So the 6 that you see pictured here, which are in the gallery, which are 3 houses, a garage, a sugar camp, and a barn. And I started by collecting photos of all of those places, various photos, so working from various, some were black and white photographs that my younger sister had actually taken for a NASCAD intro photo or intermediate photo project. I was asking her about it the other day, but she couldn't remember which class she was taking it for. They were medium format black and white photos she had taken and developed. So some of those photos I worked from, as well as my own color photos. And so I started with doing these sketches, sort of cropping the images, deciding what was actually going to go on the hooked rug that I was making. So starting with a pattern, making this pattern, and choosing the colors that were going to go in each of those rugs. So those little squares of color that you see are just breaking down the color scheme of each of those rugs. And I started this project, I remember, in the summer. So what I wanted, one main reason why I started this way with these little thumbnail sketches and these little color blocks was because it was summer, and I knew I could dye the wool outside in the summer and prepare for making these rugs in the winter. So that's what I did. I went from these little sketches and took all those little blocks of color and made sure I had that color palette to start from, to work from. And then taking each one individually from there, like having this collection of colored wool and taking each rug individually. I don't remember what order I rug hooked them in. I might have sort of done them in the order that they're shown here, actually. It's sort of arbitrary, the order that I went in. And each one took a couple of months probably to make. And doing drawings, so blowing it up to a larger scale, which you can see an example of. Find it, here we go. There. So, so that's one of the later ones, the kitchen stove one. But taking it and blowing it up on brown paper to scale to the size that I wanted, and transferring it onto a burlap backing with a marker. So drawing just the outlines, just to get the right perspective and have an outline to work from, essentially. And then from there, the burlap gets stretched on a frame, so it's stretched so that it's nice and tight, and using a little rug hook that's pretty similar to a crochet hook, and cutting the wool into strips. You can see some of the wool here. So these are some of the wool fabrics, some of them over-dyed fabrics, found fabrics of like skirts and blazers, jackets that have been chopped up and over-dyed various colors. Also like undyed wool, and like to get these yellows, and starting with new wool. So a combination of wool fabrics, and there's just some yarn. You can see some yarn down here. So stretching the burlap on the frame, and then physically rug hooking. So sort of approaching it, it's in sort of a painterly way, like having this color palette that I work from, which is sort of basically like having a whole bunch of different colors of paints. Sort of the way I think of it, I guess. And working from there. And I have one photo of a rug in progress, but I don't want to.
Okay, well, we can find it.
Sure.
One thing I was curious about was why you went with rug hooking as opposed to just making a drawing or making a painting.
And that, I was thinking about that the other day, wondering why I decided to rug hook them. Because before doing these pieces, so I worked for Deanne Fitzpatrick for quite a few years and dyed wool for her. And so just as a hobby, I made rugs for myself. So like I was moving into an apartment in Halifax, and I wanted a rug for the living room floor, so I just made a 4-foot by 6-foot rug for the floor. And so that was one of the first rugs that I made. And so just made small ones, a lot of them really geometric shapes. And after that, I went from that to hooking these buildings, and I'm not really sure why I chose rug hooking off the bat. I think it probably had something to do with the fact it would be easier to get the image hooking it in a rug than weaving it, because before that I was weaving blankets of landscapes, and it's really hard within a woven structure, weaving this as a tapestry would just take, in my mind, it would take too long. I wanted it to be faster. So I feel like maybe that's why I rug hooked rather than draw or painted. I guess dyeing the wool, I know dyeing wool really well and getting the color palette that I want. Yeah, so.
Yeah, because I think of rug hooking as being kind of a laborious, time-consuming process, and so for me, like to think of it as being a quick thing. It's kind of
it's quicker than weaving it, I guess.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
true.
know. Yeah.
It's true. I say to Joanna, I think you're like an expert in dyeing. You've led all these dyeing workshops, and I said, well, I guess I was curious, do you go out and find all the tiny bits of wool that you need and the colors that you need? I would get lost in Frenchies and take a long time, but so you are able to quickly dye something?
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty, I've been dyeing wool using a certain kind of dye for almost 20 years, or 18 years maybe? I don't know. I started dyeing for Deanne in 2001, so 15 years.
Wow.
So I feel like I know that dye so well that it's really easy for me to when I go to Value Village or Salvation Army looking for clothes, I'm really fast. I know what I want. I know what I can dye over.
Right.
And so I just quickly, I don't know. That language, I guess, I know really well.
Well,
So
and I thought it was interesting how you talked about your history with painting, or taking a painting class, and learning about color theory, and essentially it's just mixing colors.
Yeah, and I did quite a bit of painting at NASCAD. I remember one year I was supposed to do intermediate weaving, but the class was full, so I kept going with painting, so I did intermediate painting. So I think a lot of that, and even though I left painting aside for a long time and moved to textiles, a lot of that knowledge of mixing colors and color theory and all, I feel like it all comes from that painting background.
Okay. As you know, we host this annual event, Handmade Assembly, every year, and we always have a panel discussion or a roundtable discussion at the opening of the Handmade Assembly, and consistently every year, one of the main topics for conversation that come up is the element of time, and how time is so integrated with the idea of DIY culture or things that are handmade. And you mentioned that too to me, about how time was so important.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
And I think in terms of the time I spend on projects, I guess, varies, but for this specific project, because woven blankets that I've done in the past, I've done commissions of landscapes for people that I don't necessarily have a connection to that landscape. I just execute whatever the individual is looking for. But in this case, for this project, it was it was much closer to me in a way. So the time spent on it was almost like extra time that I got to spend at this place that I liked so much. So I think of it as, even though it took a lot of time, I don't really think about it. I have often tried to force myself to write down the time that I spend rug hooking, and I have tried in the past few months, and I can't keep it up. I never remember to write it down, and it's I'll just estimate. It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't sink in, the time, the actual time that I'm spending it's not irrelevant, but it's not a primary aspect of it, I guess.
Right. And I think of that idea of when you're knitting something, or when you're working on something that's handmade, how what you might be listening to on the radio, or what you're watching on TV, or your surroundings, and how that kind of enters into the work somehow. And for you, did you find that you were thinking about the farm, or is that sort of too
I do watch
neatly
movies
tied
when
up.
I'm road cooking.
Yeah.
But quite often I watch movies that I've seen before, so I don't have to be fully engaged in it the whole time.
Right.
But it's something, and one reason why I watch movies is because it's like a chunk of time, and I don't like to road cook for longer than an hour and a half, 2 hours, because I want to be able to road cook for a long time, and I don't want to wear out my hands.
Yeah.
And I do notice, I do get pain in my hands if I road cook for long periods of time, or if I'm trying to get something done. So, like, mostly, like, having something play, like a podcast or a movie or something, is like a set amount of time. But I think at the beginning, when I first started working on this project, I didn't listen to anything, or maybe just the radio. And so just, yeah, your mind wanders, I guess. And when you're rug cooking a certain thing, sometimes I remember working on things like I always get up and stand and like look away from what I'm working on and don't necessarily look at the photo that I'm working at and like remember what it actually looked like in comparison to what I'm doing. Yeah, so that is nice, I think, going back to that memory.
One thing I was wondering about is how much you rely, especially for this project with the hooked rugs of the farm, how much of it do you rely on your memory of the place or photographs?
Yeah, so it's a combination, I think, and especially like for some of them I only used black and white photos, like the one of my grandmother's house was just from a black and white photo, so all the color was my own memory. And a few of the photos I worked from too, like the rug of the sugar camp. I hooked it in spring, but the photo I was working from was of the fall. So, but spring is important as far as sugar making goes, because that's the time of year. So I guess that's why I did it in spring, maybe. I also wanted that to have a variety of seasons. Yeah, so thinking about working from photos and from memory in combination, for sure.
And you spent a lot of time there.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, weekends growing up.
I think it's a common
Yeah.
experience for those people who have
Yeah.
relatives in the area.
Yeah.
But yeah, you spend a lot of time at this place, and
Mhm.
then you know these buildings, you know the landscape,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of embedded
Mhm.
there. Rug hooking, obviously, many of us know, was born out of a sense of practicality or necessity to deal with cold winters and trying to keep drafts down in homes, and in the winter months it became kind of a perfect time to rug hook because especially in fishing communities, because obviously the coves and water would freeze over or the ice would move in and it would make it difficult to fish. And so women in particular, men too, but mostly the females in the community would begin to hook these rugs using material that was gathered from the clothes that people
old clothes
would wear.
Yeah.
And I read this really interesting thing today that in a lot of the rugs from the Maritimes, there's a lot of darker colors, and it apparently came from a lot of the uniforms that were worn, or
the
work
war.
clothes.
Yeah.
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 And that light-colored rugs were saved for the company, or when you were having guests over. And so I thought that was really interesting in terms of the coloration and things.
Another interesting little tidbit about coloring of like clothing and uniforms during the war, uniforms as well as clothing, like during the wartime. Chemical dyes were like used to make bombs at that time instead of make dyes with. And so there's a lot of clothing that's sort of drab colors in that time period because there's no chemical dyes during that time, which is kind of interesting.
Wow. Well, I think this idea of resourcefulness is something that is completely linked with the practice of making rugs and making do, or using what's at hand is clearly something that is part of the practice.
Yeah.
I think I mean, I'm not an expert on rug hooking, although I'm becoming kind of obsessed with the history of it in reading about it, is that missions were set up, or these collectives were arranged, especially, well, we know of the Shetty Camp collective, and what I didn't know was that Mabel Bell, Alexander Graham Bell's wife, was essential in starting that collective and that group of rug hooking women. And the idea was to set up in a sense, a creative economy, so that these communities could, and women could have income in the times where they weren't fishing.
Yep.
And I thought it was fantastic. You know, this history of the Bells in the Maritimes is so fascinating in terms of the enterprising that went on. But a woman named Lillian Burke used to come and spend time at the Bells' house just near Bedeck in Cape Breton. And she was very entrepreneurial, and she was an artist and an artisan who lived in New York, and she would come for the summers and work with these women, and they basically produce this cottage industry of making these rugs. And it's super interesting, and if you have a chance to look at that history, I encourage you to take a look at that. So there is this history here in the Maritimes, clearly. There was also the Grenfell mission.
Yeah, the Grenfell mission, which is pretty similar, same
idea.
Concept.
And then the Garrett, or the Blue Nose hook rugs that were from Nova Scotia. And they would produce these stamps or patterns and then sell them so people could make their own rugs. And of course you'd see bits of personal touches enter into these rugs. They were following patterns, but this own personal flair would come up through the rugs. And sometimes they're referred to as primitive rug hooking or like folk art, or they can kind of land in that territory. And clearly, I don't think that's what you're doing. Like, in a way, you're not working from a pattern at all. You're not producing a pattern. It's not necessarily to produce a commodity to be sold.
Yeah.
So I guess this sort of will ease us into talking about the farm a little bit more, but it seemed to me that like you are really interested, and we talked about this idea of moving beyond like a very generic representation of a house, or this home sweet home kind of cross-stitched house that maybe was
a traditional thing that was rug hooked, probably.
Yeah. But for you, you're moving towards this more naturalistic representation of your family farm, and it was important for you to
show things as they are.
Yeah,
I guess like the reality, like not idealizing a rural setting. I guess.
Yeah, and in many of the rugs, there's little bits of detail. And do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or do you have an image
like
there?
the sunlight box is the one that stands out too. Do I have the image of the finished one here? This is one of the ones. So this is in progress, obviously. One of the details that I mentioned to Adriana before was this coat hanger that's hanging in the doorway, and something that was always hanging. I remember it always hanging in that doorway anyway, and my grandmother would have like beans hanging off of it, drying by the fire, because the kitchen stove was on the other side of that wall, the back side of that wall. So it was always hanging, waiting for something to. It just stayed sort of like stuck in the molding of the top of it. And one thing, when I showed my sister this rug while I was working on it, she saw the coat hanger hanging there. It's like, oh yeah, the coat hangers. That's where it was. Yeah. Yeah, one of those just sort of mundane things that shows this place as it was.
And didn't your cousin mention something about
my cousin. So this little frame on the wall is actually family photos of my cousins and I. And my cousin saw a photo that I posted on Facebook, I think, and he said, "Oh, I think I'm in that." I'm in one of those pictures. And he's just like a garbled up jumble, but yeah, so it's kind of interesting, people that know those things. Like, because I think partially these rugs are for, I mean, they speak to a situation that a lot of people are familiar with, but at the same time, they're like a memorial or like something to celebrate and keep for the people that know this place really well as well.
And they're kind of mementos of lived experience. For me, when I saw these, I often think of them as like settings, obviously for life.
Yeah.
And life to be carried out. And
Right.
there's no people in any of the rugs.
No.
Right? It's just about these interior spaces.
Yeah.
And now the interior spaces are becoming something that you're focusing on more. And this is a newer rug, right?
Yeah, so this is, besides the second edition of the kitchen, I guess, this is one of the newest ones. And you can see that photo that I worked from for this particular one. The photos, maybe I should bring those photos up,
Yeah, actually,
should I?
this would be a good time. One of the things, I'll just talk for a second
Yeah,
while you
sure.
get those ready. When I was talking to Joanna, and I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to know why you made this series was that your family had to make a difficult decision. And the farm had to be given up. So can you just tell us a bit about that background before you want to show us those?
Yeah, I'll just... Yeah, so the work that I started making when I was a master's student, I guess previous to that, I always made work about Atlantic Canada. So I'm from just outside of Moncton, and I always made woven, like from the time between being a student at NASCAD, I guess my final weaving projects at NASCAD were all based on maritime landscapes. So weaving landscapes, dyeing the wool and weaving imagery. And from there, when I went to the UK, I was, I guess I should have the photos from my master's degree. Oh well. I started making work about New Brunswick, I guess, specifically, and focusing on the colors of the New Brunswick landscape, and there's a piece I can show you in a little bit of documenting all of those colors and dyeing wool based on that color palette. And from there, while I lived in England, learning that, knowing that eventually the farm was going to be sold to the gravel company that was encroaching upon it over the past 50 years or so, knew that at some point it wouldn't be sensible to have a farm there anymore, and it would make more sense to sell that property. And so my uncle was the most recent person to farm the property, so he sold all of the land, was sold to the gravel quarry. And so I learned that when I was in the UK, and so I started immediately making work about not just the New Brunswick landscape, but the farm specifically. So starting off with all the work I feel like I made during my master's degree, and after that, I think were all sort of studies leading up to this particular body of work. Like sort of starting from afar, like looking at aerial photographs and maps of the area and the size of the gravel pits. And I have some aerial photographs that I've collected from the Department of Natural Resources since the 40s that show the progression of the pit getting bigger and bigger. And I have those actual photographs here, if anyone wants to look at them after. And I have some
set them out after.
slides of them too.
They're pretty fast.
Just to see the physical change of what was actually physically happening to the landscape, to the land. So doing all of those little bits and pieces during my master's degree, and then it's almost like I'm getting like closer and closer and closer and more intimate with the work that I've been making, and so led up to making these interior pieces, and I feel like I had to make those exterior buildings first before I could go inside, in a way, and I didn't know that was happening while I was doing it, but so I have more photos that I want to rug hook, and these photos were taken by a friend of mine, Jarrett Beliveau, who is from Moncton originally, and we were at university, in high school and at university together, and I asked him if he could come and take some photos for me of the farm before it was gone, so that I had like physical documented photographs of that place. So we took some interior ones and exterior, and so I used those, like his eye as a photographer, like cropped a lot of these images. So took these images, and he took them with the medium format camera. So these are all scans of the digital scans of the negatives that he has of those photos. And so I'll just go through them. So there's a few more here that I want to take. So this one, for example, is one that I'm going to rug hook still. So after doing the kitchen one, I realized, like, oh wow, like I really need to do more interior pieces because they're really resonating with people that are looking at them as well. And these photos were taken after my grandmother had moved out of the farmhouse. So this is in the farmhouse that my grandmother lived in for about 70 years. And before that, her in-laws lived in it. It's about 100 and, I'm looking at my mom to get the number. She doesn't know either. Over 100 years old, anyway. Yeah. So these photos were taken in, I believe it was 2011, when the house was empty. So most of the furniture was moved out, but there was still some things in the house. My uncle was still living on the property, but my grandmother had moved out. She moved out of the house when she was 94. And she's 101 now. So here's, the photo of the living room. So some of the furniture is actually not the same as it was always. So like my cousins, for example, look at it and are like, what is that chair doing in this spot? Because some of the furniture had been moved out already.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting.
And Jarrett took some shots to, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Of the exterior of the property too, right?
So there's a few. So this is one of the ones that I've worked from to hook as well. That's in the gallery.
Oh, and this is the one where you were telling me where you can see the roof tiles coming off of the barn. And that detail is something.
Like where they're rusty, sort of here.
Yeah.
This end of the barn is boarded up. These were all taken the same day, I believe. Or this one was summer. We went back a few times. So I went with him, I think, once in the summer of 2011 and then again at Thanksgiving. And then he went back on his own in the winter when the buildings were being torn down. So I was never there when the buildings were being torn down. And this was the same day. So this is from the back side. So this is where the gravel pit was actually in relation to where you see the farmhouse, and you can see the garage there as well.
So how many years did it take for this, the pit was getting closer and closer, and you can really see this in the aerial photographs, and maybe we'll show that if we can, but there's this real sense of the land just kind of dropping away, especially when you see it in that aerial photography.
And it's really fascinating to see the aerials as well, because one thing I was looking at the other day was even the water sources. Like there's a pond in the area, and I was just looking on Google Earth of it as it looks today, and that pond is pretty much drained because of the blasting and the water changes in the water table because of the gravel pit, which is interesting. And also you can see like where the property line is of this 150-acre farm property simply from trees being cut down. So you can see over the years, like that people used the land, like cut down the trees to use for firewood, and you can see the outline of that. Like I didn't have to, it was very easy to tell where those lines were simply from people using that land, which is really interesting to see over the course of 50 years or 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the first photo that I have, that first aerial of the pit is really small, is in 44. So,
Okay. Do you have that image? Oh, there, yeah.
this is the same, just the other direction.
Yeah.
So
Pretty intense. I found the most intense image of the pile of rubble.
it's killing.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah,
to see.
this
one's powerful
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And I think a lot of these, I owe it to Jarrett definitely for like his eye as a photographer and cropping
Mm-hmm.
these images the way they are. Yeah, this is
Yeah, it's a tough image to see, especially the oilcloth,
Yeah.
the handmade linoleum.
and it's the
painted
same
linoleum. Yeah.
cloth that you see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
clearly, there's a poignancy to the rugs, and it's not, it's. I think what's really important for me to point out is just that that these aren't just sort of decorative rugs, and that there is a real kind of story there. And you talk about it as being a tribute, and not only to the farm, but a way of life, and this desire to kind of, or a longing for this kind of life. As Joanna pulls up these images, the aerial shots, it maybe sounds kind of cheesy, but I couldn't help but think of like the metaphor of a hole being worn in a rug, and eventually it happens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a rug. It's beautiful, but it's disintegrating.
Yeah.
The burlap is falling apart.
Yeah.
All the stitches are coming out. It's still a beautiful thing, but the thing is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And it's it's a hole that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think of some of these photos.
Yeah.
So
So this just gives a idea of where the place is. So north of Moncton, just near Magnetic Hill, pretty close to Magnetic Hill. Magnetic Hill is over here. Yeah, and so here is a photo of, I'll just outline it. So like this is the outline of the 150 acre property. So you can see it's cuts right here because at this point they didn't own that bit or weren't mining.
and when
that.
was this photograph?
This one is 2014, I think.
Okay.
Yep. And so this here is the farm field. So where I showed you that photo of those cattle in the field, that's right here.
Okay.
And that's the barn roof that you can see. In the next view, I think I have it outlined. Oh yeah, this is a screen capture that I took off of Google Earth 2 days ago. Oops. What happened to the other ones? Oh, at the top. Right, they're numbered just differently. There we go.
Oh yeah. So this is. I don't know if any of you have farms or have farms in your family, but there's something that happens where photographers go up in airplanes and they take aerial photographs of your family farm, and they come to your door and they try to sell you the image of your farm. This happens to my partner's family all the time. But that's, in a way, it's been a very interesting historical record of the landscape of their farm and how it's changed over the years. So is that what this is?
Yeah, so that's what this is. So this was taken in the 70s. And so this is a photo that all of my family members have. And my grandmother kept chickens, so this is the chicken house. She had, at one point she had 400 chickens, I think. It's two levels.
And how many family members lived on the farm until they had to move because the farm was
So
being
there's
sold?
the farmhouse that my grandmother lived in, and then my aunt had a house, and my aunt and her husband and their 2 kids grew up there, and then my uncle and his wife and kids grew up there too. But my uncle was the one who farmed beef cattle, mostly beef cattle and sugar making.
And so the question has also come up about after you've made the rugs, you were wondering, do you give these to your family members, or how does that legacy, or how do you kind of deal with that? You know, you've made these objects.
Yeah.
Do you give them as gifts? Do they remain as a collection? Maybe you could talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, and that is still
challenging.
That is still a question.
Yeah.
Too. I think at one point at the beginning, I didn't think about what was going to happen to them afterward. And then partway through, I was thinking, oh, well, I'll give like the hooked rug of my uncle's house to him and my aunt's house to her. And yeah, but I don't know. Like, there's not enough for everyone to get one, so I don't know. And also, I don't know if they would be appreciated, or if it's like it's hard to look at them for some of us. Maybe. I think maybe it's more of a happy memory for my cousins and I, maybe, because we didn't necessarily grow up there, but we spent a lot of time there, but we weren't there our whole childhood. Yeah, so I'm not sure what, I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, I think as a body of work, as a collection of images, it definitely tells a story, right? And there's a narrative there.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I think might be curious, or I mean, I'm always interested in how an exhibition of artwork works and how conversations come about. Obviously, you're not always there to hear the conversations that your viewers would participate in, but I think that there's a collective experience here to be shared, right? And clearly, this isn't the only thing, or the only time that this has happened.
Yeah, exactly, which is, I mean, it started as my own way of thinking about this place that I was going to miss a lot. And so that's sort of how it started, I guess. But after making the work and showing it and talking to more and more people about it and realizing how important this situation is to a lot of people in the Maritimes and Canada, North America probably, how common it is, I guess, and how so many people can relate to this story. So it's just one aspect of a farming culture that is different than it used to be.
Yeah, a different way of life.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was also thinking about was not only is it a collective understanding of what's happening to the agricultural economy, there's something there that is shared, but also, just to step back, there's something shared in the process of making rugs.
Yeah.
That's linked to this region. And I thought you told a funny story about a time where you showed your grandmother what you were working on.
Yeah. I think I showed her one of the, I brought one of the rugs in to show her where she lives. I think maybe it was the one with the trees in the middle. She didn't recognize it at first. She didn't realize where it was. But I really liked the way she looks at things like that. Like, oh yeah, you made that. Of course you made that. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just, that's what you do.
You made a rug.
You do stuff, yeah. Whereas there's a lot of cases now where like, oh wow, like, I don't know, like being amazed or surprised, or when people make things like that. Whereas, like what she knows of making things is just everyday life. Like, that's just what you do. You make it. She's still making applique quilt blocks. And because it's something to do, you need to do, I really like that thought, I guess, that it's normal, it's regular.
Yeah. Part of life.
Yeah.
And it's true. I think it's becoming, again, definitely there's a resurgence in the idea of the handmade and making things, and we're tending to value that again. But I think that it's not that we want to make it quaint, or oh, look at, we're doing this, so we're doing this crafty little stuff.
Yeah.
But there is I think what's important to recognize is this history, and it's a reinvention of that history, or revisiting of a process, a revisiting of materials, of perhaps, again, like you've spoken of, a desire to return to a more kind of sustainable practice.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that, we talked a little bit about nostalgia, and you mentioned maybe not so much about nostalgia in terms of the rugs, but maybe the feeling of the fact that this isn't a way of life that you will, be immediately connected to.
Right, yeah.
And, now that family house or that farm is gone. And
Right.
if you want to kind of pursue that sustainable...
Yeah, if I want to pursue that, it's a lot harder to start from scratch, I guess, having like this, the handing down of the family farm is something that doesn't happen nearly as often.
Right.
And that is unfortunate. Yeah.
You talked about the fact that your grandmother also had a lot of boarders come and stay, or people would travel and work on
Yeah,
the farm
like
and also pass through and stay.
Yeah, stay and work, and like some of those recipes that I screen printed onto flour sack fabric potentially might have been recipes that she would have used to like feed boarders that may have came, or her great grandparents as well. Yeah, because when you operated a farm, like you needed help, so there was people always traveling around borders.
And the recipes that are in the show are printed on, you might have noticed it's a floral fabric. And that fabric came from printed feed sacks. So there was this realization that people were being resourceful, and so flour companies and other types of mills started printing on the sacks that they would sell their wares in, because they realized people were using the fabric to make either quilts or garments out of them. And so there was this understanding and I think very sensible realization that people are going to use this fabric,
Useful.
so let's make it look nice.
Yeah, yeah. And companies would advertise, like, buy so many bags of our brand of flour and you'll have enough fabric to make a dress.
Yes, exactly. It was a marketing ploy, and I think that it's so ingenious. And I guess for me, I have this longing for that kind of behavior, or that kind of attitude, or that kind of just being smart. And I feel like we have really left that behind.
Yeah, I think we're getting back to it, hopefully.
But, and maybe seeing some of this work helps us to kind of think about that.
Yeah,
maybe.
hopefully. Maybe. Yeah.
I think that's it in terms of questions that I had, or that I wanted people to be aware of in terms of what was happening with the images that we've seen here in the show. Is there anything else that you wanted to let us know about or talk about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
Maybe, do you feel comfortable if we open up the floor for questions?
I'm sure there's...
People might have questions about the process, or of course some of the background. Being quiet. Might have answered a lot of questions. Oh, Jemmy's got a question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of happened naturally, I guess. Didn't happen intentionally from the start. And all of those subject matter, the fact that it speaks to all of those things, I think I'm really glad that it does. I really want to like delve into that more. And I think like going forward, potentially like making some more rugs of the interiors and things like that. But just in terms of subject matter and where my work will go like forward from here, I think like having those things, like realizing those are the subject matter that I've been working with, I guess, is eye-opening, reassuring. I don't know, all those things. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think there was a question up front.
Another one's come to mind. One thing I wanted to comment on was when you had mentioned, Adrian, that there weren't any people in the room and on the property.
Yeah.
But I was here the other night when you opened, and it seems to me that by not putting the people in there, that we as observers put our own people in them.
Right.
When I
Yeah.
was brought up, when I was young, my dad was from a farming area in PEI, and my mother was from Woodstock, Quebec. And so every summer, we were in all those farmhouses. So you can look at those and you can see your own people in them.
Yeah.
And the couch is especially a strong one. There was always a couch.
Yeah.
And one of my memories of the couch was I had braids, and I was quite rebellious, but my mother tried to braid this all the time. And I can remember jumping up more than once, because I didn't learn quickly, and getting that hair caught in the fly catchers above. Because those were always there too, for like your hanger.
And a lot of those pieces of furniture too, like there wasn't 100 places to go to buy furniture. Like
No,
it's
they're very,
staple,
very staple.
yeah, pieces of
The other
people
question
recognize.
I had was about the dyeing that you do of the wools that you get. I noticed you have a lot of the tartan or plaid. Do you leave it the way it is?
Sometimes, and sometimes I like cut it in half and over dye part of it and keep some of it
so
as
you do
is.
sometimes
Depends on what
over-dye.
colors it is.
So
Yeah.
if you over-dye one of those pieces,
Yeah.
does it take up all different colors as well? Like, because it's different colors?
Yeah,
you know?
so
Okay.
each of the, I think of it as like adding and subtracting, like adding, like if it's a red and blue plaid, like if I add yellow to it, then I'll have oranges and greens in the end. But having those plaids and tartans are really nice to have because they give you like variation in color without necessarily dyeing a whole bunch of different colors on one piece of fabric. 'Cause the color's already there.
It's really hard to know.
Yeah, exactly,
I
yeah.
noticed it in your trees
Yeah.
on one of the roofs.
The
that
roof,
you did
yeah.
with red.
It's good for shingles on roofs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really-
Just those little
really
bits.
nice.
Yeah.
It sort of breaks up
Yeah.
the colors.
Yeah. And when I buy things, like the kind of dyes that I use are specific to wool.
Okay.
And when I buy things, I make sure that like 60% or more is wool so that I know that it will over dye. Yeah. And also I like that wool is biodegradable too. Like it will degrade over time. And I like that thought as well. That it's not going to be around forever.
So do you use, like, so all of your rugs pretty well have that kind of percentage of wool, or do you use other
or more.
fabric in?
No, majority is wool.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely majority.
Any other questions? I just wanted to point out too that Joanna did bring some original photographs, and if anybody, she's kindly brought them in. And some of the original aerial photographs are here. Also some other images that she put up on a blog, and I'm just going to plug the blog.
Do we want to bring it up or not?
I think, well, we can. It's there. So if you want to just go. When I was talking with Joanna, she's like, oh yeah, I did this blog for Dan Fitzpatrick.
I kind of forget that.
And,
Is it here?
yeah.
Blog.
Yeah, you just click on it. And you can scan through it there if you want, but a lot of this information
few of the photos.
is on Joanna's blog that she wrote for Deanne. And it's so fantastic because there's this, you're documenting the farm with photos, but she's also documented the whole process.
I did a lot of research in the beginning.
Yeah.
I have a lot of,
And it's
I have a lot of
fascinating. And I guess the blog is really one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation tonight, because so much came up. And you can see on the blog some of Joanna's work that she did in grad school. So I thought that the students might be interested in seeing some of that. How an idea is developed and carried through, and that it's not just an idea for a month. Like, this has been a 10-year project. And I think that's really integral to understand that this, it can be so rich. An idea can be so rich and bear so many ideas. And it's all there. I love this photo.
Yeah, me too.
So the blog is available on Deanne Fitzpatrick's website.
I think you have to search through because it was 2012 that I did it, I think. So it's in the archives on our website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
So you
there.
can find it.
So I encourage you to kind of scroll through that. You'll find it. It's there. There's some really fabulous. That's you, right?
Yeah, that's
Inside the kitchen.
Oh yeah, here's the work. This is the piece I was mentioned, just like the color palette for the New Brunswick landscape that I did in grad school. So this is like 77 8-inch square blocks. Little wood stretchers that I made and stretched dyed wool fabric over them, based on color studies that I had done in New Brunswick over the course of a year. And then took Canadian imagery specific to that location and did some little details here and there on the pieces. I think there's no details there. But I feel like this, like the length of time working on this project just sort of shows that when you start on something, you don't necessarily need to know where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to.
And you still don't know.
I still don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Just like,
yeah, it's a great body of work, and I just wanted to say thank you, Joanna, for coming tonight and elaborating on the conversation that we had. And I just want to plug the workshop that Joanna's going to do tomorrow night here in the gallery, also at 7:30? 7 p.m.
And registration is required. From 8 o'clock last week, and workshop.
Super. Please join me in thanking Joanna. Thanks, Joanna.
and thanks to Adriana, too, because I feel like conversing about these things, especially when we talked on Skype for the first bit, like it's really good to bounce things off of someone, and you don't always do that or forget to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, good for me, too.
Yeah.
Thanks. I kind of went